Woo! The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for another little Wednesday Q&A. And it's going to be a good time for this one because, well, okay, first off, actually, it's going to be fun because we're going to get into a broad range of subjects, okay? We're going to get into some really technical stuff. Then we're going to get into maybe a little bit of gaming, a little bit of geekery. I mean, we're going to run the gamut on this one, baby. So first things I want to get out there is that I did get asked after on episode 210 of Sovryn Tech, of a Prime episode of Sovryn Tech Prime. This Saturday, I had talked about Ladar Levinson's, restarting LavaBit and everything, and for people to jump on board. Got a lot of great response from that. A lot of people said that they jumped on it. Good for you. I'm there as well, right with you. Just waiting for the pre-order period effectively to end. But people did ask me, I got from a great patron. I was asked, could you do a breakdown either on a Q&A or on a Sovryn Tech Prime episode? Could you do a breakdown of Dime and Magma, which are two, Dime is effectively the encryption scheme that that LavaBit's using, and then Magma itself is the email server software that they are really unleashing upon the world. In fact, it's already unleashed upon the world. You can go ahead and use it and kind of break into it. I will line that up. So and I'm more than happy to do a technical breakdown of it. I've looked at what has been released and available over time. I definitely need to take a closer look at a lot of the code that they've put out there now. So I will break down exactly how all of that works. There's kind of a more simple explanation at lavabit.com under tell me more about this, and they kind of break down into it. But yeah, I would like to do that as well. In fact, maybe the best thing that I could do, besides just me, taking a look at the code, is I could try and reach somebody at LavaBit and see if they'd actually be willing to be on the show. And I think that would actually be very, very beneficial, and we could get the words right from the horse's mouth. So maybe that's something that I will set up as far as getting that out there. Because I mean, not that I'm concerned about getting something wrong necessarily, but I think it'd be really fun to have somebody on board, and also so that we could talk about one of my favorite things to talk about with people when I have guests, especially guests of a technical nature, is roadmap. I like to know, okay, what are your thoughts for a year from now? Where do you want this to go? And I would love to hear what LavaBit has in mind for that. Even if their answer is they just want to stay, as, okay, no, we're just going to be this really secure email solution. That is totally valid. And honestly, there's a lot of people that need great email. And so talk about scale. Well, fuck, you could add almost everybody on the planet, almost. So I'm gonna set that up and just see what can happen as far as talking more about that goes. If I have to do it myself, that's fine. I'll make that a reality. So okay, I want to just a little errata here before we little shop talk before we get into the questions, and because there's a few I'd like to get through. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all of them, including I wanted to do a review of the new DC animated movie, the Justice League Dark movie, which I might end up just doing that as a separate show. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to it in time in this, and it's worth talking about because right now it seems, just saying quickly, that the live action universe of DC is in peril. It is in turmoil. Even though I still think Wonder Woman looks like it's going to be an amazing film. Aquaman might be all right too. I don't know. But certainly, like the Flash is in production, kind of a degree of production hell. Not production hell as in like it's not going to get made, but production hell is in just the entire production is getting turned upside down in a very real sense. Same with the Batman with Ben Affleck. There's a lot of talk that now he's not directing it at all. People are wondering if he's going to walk away completely. I mean, it's a mess. But I've always said that while Marvel certainly has, even though I don't necessarily like the movies, while Marvel certainly has its act together as far as its live action cinematic universe, they've never had their act together when it comes to the the animated movies. Obviously, they did great with the '90s Spider-Man, '90s Iron Man, '90s Surfer, and of course '92 X-Men is one of the greatest cartoons of all time. But that's where DC really shines when it comes to their animated universe across the board, but certainly as well, in their animated features, their animated movie series. They just do top-notch work. It's the best shit on the planet. I can't wait for any time. It doesn't matter, even if it's a character I was never into. When I know there's a DC animated movie coming out, I am so there. It's an event for me because I just know it's going to be so goddamn good in comparison to just about any film, in my opinion. They really bring the goods when they do that. So anyway, I don't know if I'm going to get into Justice League Dark here, but if I do not in this episode, I will talk about it in maybe I'll do a quick 15-minute extra Patreon episode or 30-minute Patreon episode to talk about it. So that's coming up, and also coming up is I will be doing, and I promise this, I will be doing a live, unfortunately, Google Hangout. Now, there's other ways that I've looked into OBS Studio, which is kind of an open source version of Google Hangout, or of that kind of streaming software and all this. There's a lot of other options. There's Skype, there's Zoom, and whatever. I'm gonna try out the Google Hangout, see how it works. But it will be live. I will be taking your questions. What I'm going to do is that when I'm ready for it, I'm going to send out the link because believe me, with some of my clients, I've had to mess with Hangouts and it is a clusterfuck. There's a chance that when I do this Hangout, it's going to completely fail. That nobody's going to be able to join it. Nobody's going to be able to ask questions or anything like that. That it's just going to be an absolute mess. But you'll get your chance. If you don't want to be on camera, you don't have to turn on the camera, but you're going to get audio. You're going to be a part of it. It's going to get recorded. The whole thing. It's going to be, interactive. It's not just going to be you can text me questions. You can come on and you can ask me a question and we'll kind of move on. How long it will go, I'm not going to set a hard time, a hard limit, but an hour I think would be interesting. If it goes 2 hours, it goes 2 hours. I can't picture going much further than that. I want to make sure the technology works first. Because believe me, Hangouts is in talk about something in turmoil. It's in fucking turmoil. There's just constant problems with it. That I know a lot of podcasts and other shows that rely on Hangouts to function, where they are scrambling at the beginning of the show just to get everything working. Every single week, Google just doesn't give a shit, and they have. We'll talk about this more in episode 211 of Sovryn Tech coming out this week. But Google, you can't trust the Google service. You just can't. It's a miracle Gmail has lasted so long, frankly, and I don't mind if people get away from that either. In fact, I got a funny message on Twitter from somebody saying that their 9-year-old son. Runs around just saying, "Woo! I'm the golden stallion. I'm the man of tomorrow." He just starts going off, and then he tells his mom, "Like, I don't want a Gmail, mommy," because the parents listen to the show, to Sovryn Tech. Oh, I thought that was cute. Anyway. And Gmail now. Too rich a target, but we'll talk about securing ourselves here in just a minute. So the other thing I just want to get into quick for a little bit, and then I'm just going to spend 2 minutes on this. All right, sorry. So the Hangouts, the Google Hangouts, the live Google Hangouts, where you can come on the show, you can ask me questions. We'll do one person at a time. I'm going to be running the whole thing myself, no producer, nothing like this. Okay, which kind of, that's kind of how I do Sovryn Tech anyway. But I'm gonna be. I don't want to say. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to use the word tyrant, but I'm just gonna say I'm gonna. If I feel, if I got to cut somebody off, I'm going to cut them off. Even though I love all my patrons, and I know you guys, it won't be a problem at all, you guys and gals. So anyway, I'm just saying, take no offense. I just want to try and get as many people in as possible. So I'm going to have to go back into the old Free Talk Live mode where, maybe I have to cut people off at certain points or something like that, and we'll move on. But yeah, I look forward to it. I want to see what kind of conversations we can have. I want to see how it works, and I'd like to make it at least a monthly thing, if not more common. But we'll try it out and see how it works. And if we have to come up with something else for the future to make it work, because it doesn't work on this Sunday, then that's what I'll do. So set your date. Set your calendars. That'll be February 5th at 6 p.m. Eastern. Okay, 6 p.m. Eastern. I will send out the link through Patreon. So that's what you're going to want to keep an eye out for, is there will be a post on Patreon that'll only go to patrons, and it'll have the Hangout link where you can join. And what I'll mute people, or I'll make them disappear from the conversation. Maybe I won't make them disappear from the conversation, but I'll mute people, and we'll do the whole business. So that should be a lot of fun. If something changes, I'll let you know through Patreon as well. Just in case there's some emergency or the time has to change or something like that, I will keep you posted. That's the nice thing about Patreon, is I can keep right in touch with you guys instantaneously, and only you guys and gals that are patrons. So should be a lot of fun. Got that planned. Okay, one last bit that I want to get into. I think it was last week where I talked quite a bit about how I did that poll, which was phenomenal. I did the poll about the Sovryn Tech, the segment intros, and I had said that, okay, what do you guys think? Do we stick with the sexy intros that I've been doing for a few years? Do we change it up to where there's like no intros and I just talk? Do we get rid of the moans and groans? How are we going to do this? And the poll, I mean, it's been a week pretty much, and the poll overwhelmingly was keep the sexy intros. Now, so I am going to keep those for now. We have new ones, and they should be coming out with episode 6 or episode 211. This coming Saturday. So, but two things. Underneath, there were a couple of great points. One of them I was already going to implement, but it just bolstered that I needed to do it. One of them is that the intro, like the opening of the show with the music or whatever, is just too long. And so a patron made that point, and it was a solid point, and I had already planned on, and I've heard that feedback before, that my intros, or that my that the opening of the show, the music, whatever, just goes way too long, or that it was too intense or something like this, and you could detract people who might stick around if, as long as you kind of warm them up a bit at first. And all of that, not that I'm taking anything away from me. I mean, the opening music, you heard the official opening music and opening intro for Sovryn Tech, kind of from here on out for now. I mean, it can change, of course, but for here on out for now, for quite a few episodes, I guarantee you, is the opening that you heard this week on episode 210. Now, that's still porno music. It's still me. I mean, it's so blatantly obvious porno music. So it fits perfectly. But it's only like a minute long, barely a minute. And that is that sweet spot where, you're not boring people with your intro, with your intro music and all that. So I did take that bit under advisement, even though I already had that planned. Now, a second point that somebody brought up, which I really appreciated, was an interesting one. And again, I'm just going to spend like 2 more minutes on this. The second point that was brought up reminded me of something I had in mind, something special, and I teased during past Q&As. And the second point was to the effect that, either the point was that either get rid of the segment intros and the story and all the sexiness and everything, because I may not be getting my return on investment, because it does take time to make those. It's true. Or just go, do them on steroids where there's something new every single week. Like you're going to have to make it new every week. And I thought that was a great point. Now, something I teased at in the past that I didn't really lay out, and I'll tell my patrons, and if someone wants to run with this idea, go ahead. Something I had in mind that I talked with Stephanie about a few months ago was it would be really fun. And when I had this idea, it was when I used to play during the Sovryn Tech Prime episodes. During one of the breaks, I would play for 90 seconds. I would play 90 Seconds on Sex by Dr. Paul Joannides, where he would lay out some kind of, sex factoid. Something I had been playing since episode 1 of Sovryn Tech. It has always been there during one of the breaks, where, he tells you a story about Priapus or something. I don't know. And eventually, though, I ran out of those. I mean, it took years, but I ran out of those. And so my idea was, I wanted to do, if you remember the Sci-Fi Channel back in the 90s, okay, back when it was cool, they did this really cheesy, terrible effects, but fun, what they called the FTL newsfeed. Now, not FTL is in Free Talk Live, probably FTL is in Faster Than Light, but it's called the FTL newsfeed. And you can watch some of these on YouTube. And what it was like this kind of disembodied head, sort of a Max Headroom style thing, telling you the news about this mission to, somewhere in the solar system or to some other planet. And on this planet, like suddenly, kind of this cult starts, and there's all this the idea is that they found alien life, and it ends up, when these astronauts come back to Earth, they, it's kind of an astronaut's wife situation where, this cult starts to take over on Earth or whatever. It was really interesting because they were just like, it was like 90 seconds. It was really, really short. And it was all done in this news format. And I thought, when 90 Seconds on Sex, when that run was done, I was like, it would be so much fun to do, and I'd have to pre-record them all in advance for like a year, to do like a 90-second fictional news clip, that, and for me, with the Sovryn universe, like 2099 or Soviet Tech or something like that, it could take place in one of those timelines or alternate universes or something, and it would have been a lot of fun. So an idea that I have, because also the other thing that I got from a lot of people was that they have tried to share the show with some people, and they hear the moaning, and the person just instantly doesn't want to hear it. Like, they instantly turn it off. And I understand that, and that's something that people have brought up to me over the years as well, and it's a fair point to bring up. Now, I don't want to water it down by any means. I mean, if anything, I want to increase that. But I get it. I understand why that happens. Now, admittedly, and I'm not talking about my patrons, I'm talking about the average person out there, in the world that maybe you try to get to listen to the show. Admittedly, that's like, it's a little annoying that that's true. I know it's true. I understand why it's true. I get it. Okay. I'm not mad about it, but it is a little annoying that if instead of women moaning, it was gunshots going off, or some like really violent, massacre or something being played on the podcast, probably nobody would mind, and they just keep on listening. Now, this is an old thing, that people take issue with, where like in movies, in Hollywood movies, where, oh yeah, you could blow people up, you could have a massacre of millions of people, and you still get away with a PG-13 or a PG rating or something. But you show enough sex, and no, that's porno. You put a XXX label on that, and that's bullshit, right? Because why should sex be more like right? I mean, you get my point. So it's a little annoying that that's true, but I know it's true. I understand that, and so kind of my middle of the road that I'm thinking about here is in the future, not now, but maybe 10 weeks from now, maybe when we get to episode 250, we'd be coming up on 225. Maybe when we get to episode 225 or something like that, what I'll do is I'll record like 6 months worth of this kind of, this little mini episode of the Sovryn universe of, Agent Sovryn and whoever else. And I'll record them all at once, and I'll just release like that 90-second or 2-minute or whatever little segment every week, and then I'll just do, more, not bland, but just more regular, segment intros, kind of like what you've heard over the past few episodes. Okay, where it's just, like Stephanie's voice saying Hexsec or something like that, right? With some, nice music. So that's the idea that I might be running with. Might. That's not a guarantee. That is also going to take a lot of, time. But, another thing that one of the patrons mentioned was that, hey, this is like these stories are part of your identity, and if you ever do another fictional episode in the future, if you just stopped doing the segment intros and all that, then people would be discombobulated when they hear when they hear the fictional story. They're not going to get it. It's like, who are these characters? I don't understand what all this is. So I think this is that nice in-between spot to where, yeah, people will experience a story, but they'll know that it's a fictional thing and it's not part of the overall podcast. So that's my idea that I'm thinking about implementing. The only thing is that, I mean, like to do it right, and I want to do this. I want the Sovryn universe. I love this story. I love what I've built, and I'm not the only one. You people love it. That's why I think most of the votes said, no, keep the sexy. Keep these segment intros, going, keep the story alive and all this, because people really love it. The only thing is like, I think to do it that way, like, I really need to pay the voice artists very well, because they do incredible work, and like they really, I am so honored by the voice talent that I get to work with, because they pretty much say to me, without reservation, you write up whatever you want, we'll do it. And that is, in my opinion, that's a tremendous amount of trust, and that means the world to me. that these just amazing women are willing to, say, no, 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 I know you got this. You're not going to do, it's not going to be, even if it's something a little crazy, I get it. It's you. It's okay. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. So anyway, okay, I spent way too long on that. So that's kind of the future plans for the Sovereign Universe. I have so many projects going on. I have like 5 projects that I'm working on at once, to say nothing of my, day work effectively with clients that I do. But all right, so let's get into this. Why don't I start off with with the tech story here? And this is the question. Effectively, was asking, they were saying they appreciated the OS recommendations, the VPN recommendations, and all this, and of course now the mail recommendation with LavaBit. Even though we're still waiting for it to officially come out, you can pre-order it. But the question was about passwords, kind of what's the best way to go, and the person provided a bunch of links saying, okay, no, this is, just make sure you use enough odd words and all this, and there was a lot of links that honestly had terrible advice, because really there's only one way, in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion. There's other people, other security researchers as well that will bolster this. In my opinion, there's really only one way to do a proper password. Okay, it needs to be at least, and depending how far you want to go, and depending upon also, kind of the main. So for passwords, sort of the main problem is the service or software or site, whatever that you're using. What kind of passwords do they even allow you to use? Because there's a chance that you can't use a proper password. Okay, now just right out of the gate, you want a password. There should be no dictionary words whatsoever. You want to use, the entire key, as much of the keyboard as possible. Meaning you want to use special characters, you want to use numbers, capitalized letters, not capitalized letters. You really, really want to mix it up. You want as much entropy as possible, and that's really kind of the big rule there. Okay, and a great password, a proper password, should be over 21 characters. That long. And that's why, I recommend you, or, well, not that I necessarily recommend, it's not the best option, but I recommend, using a password manager of some kind. Okay, there's 1Password, which is really good. LastPass is obviously the most popular, and LastPass has a lot of features too to go along with it. It can be a lot more than just a password manager. Then KeePass is kind of a hybrid thing, to where it's not really like cloud, like your passwords aren't necessarily cloud stored. It's more localized. Of course, that has the danger of, if you need to access all the stuff on another computer, unless you set up certain features in KeePass, that can be a problem. But KeePass is probably my favorite of the password managers. And then, of course, my personal favorite is really just to use a little black book. And I mean one of those little Moleskines. I've talked about this many times. You use a little Moleskine, okay, that like a really tiny one that you can light on fire if you need to, okay, and you write out these entire passwords, okay, but you do not want to use dictionary words. There's some people who say that after enough space, like that the dictionary words don't matter. That's horseshit. Or after enough characters, that's just absolute bullshit. You want as much entropy as possible. You want to maximize entropy at all times. So you want it to be completely random. Now, the nice thing is that a lot of those password managers that I mentioned will generate and usually they do good work on this. They will generate a password for you, okay, and one of, say, a safe length. You can get away with over 15 characters is fine, but you really want to, in my opinion, you want to do like over 20, like 21 and up, for a great password. And if you can get into like the 60s, that's phenomenal. What I personally use, I actually don't. I do use some password managers at times, but what I personally use to generate passwords, I actually have a website that I go to. Now, understand, and this website itself is an education on a page. I might put it into the appendix of the Sovereign Tech Prime episodes now that we have so many resources built into there. And this is actually from the Gibson Research Corporation. Okay, so grc.com. I put a link in the show notes for this very Sovereign Tech Q&A for perfect passwords, and that's what it's called. And what it does is every time that this page that you go to, this URL that you go to, every time it regenerates, or every time it refreshes, or every time you go to it, it creates an entirely new password. Now it's doing that through a cryptographic cipher, and I mean, like this is being done just so right. It is as random as possible. It just, you never end up with the same password, and it does. I mean, like, there's a bunch of different options. Like, you have 64 random hexadecimal characters. Again, because what really, kind of where the real security lies a lot of times with passwords, I'll talk about this more in a second, is, again, the website, the service, like it's Google itself or Yahoo or whoever. What kind of password do they even let you have? Do they let you do it right in the first place? A lot of sites and services and software have gotten a lot better about that as late, but that's something to consider. So I go to this website, again, it's grc.com, and then it's just /passwords.htm. It's been there forever. I've used it forever, and I do trust it. And of course, it's been checked out. I mean, it's it very simple, very basic website. Looks like it's just from the 90s. Of course, it's done by Steve Gibson of Security Now fame, and just you refresh it, boop, new password. Refresh it, new password. Every single time, and it does a great job. It's really fun how it explains how the website works and how passwords work in general. It does a really good job of that, and you can verify. The nice thing is that there's a lot of tools at GRC. There's a lot of freeware tools that you can use to even make sure that, oh, am I really connected, to grc.com, and when I'm generating these passwords and all this. I love it. I mean, it's there. It's always handy. It's easily, it's so easy to remember, grc.com/passwords, .htm. And I can go there whenever I need to. Say I'm working with a client or something, I can just generate it. And again, I've been using it, for years and years and years and years. It does it absolutely right. So that's how I actually generate my passwords. Now there are some other systems out there that try to help you, like, create easily memorable passwords that you don't have to write down or use a password manager for. Like, now I'm trying to remember. I have one. It's a password card that, like, has a code on the back, and then that is the starting basis of your password. And then it's the name of the service, and then it's using the name of the service to kind of key code, like, that, like, A means this and M means this. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do that. But in my opinion, just go straight up. Go to this website, or something like it, but this is one that I trust, and just use one of these passwords, or use part of it. I mean, like, it generates 64, 63, 62 character passwords. You don't have to use all of those characters, but if you can, great. I mean, that's awesome. And then maybe use a password manager if you really want. Use LastPass, or NPass is another one. 1Password is a really good one. And also, like I said, KeyPass is really, like, kind of where I know it's not getting onto the cloud. I like that one a lot as well. So that's the deal with passwords, is no words whatsoever. There's some tricks that people have talked about where they might use, like, some people want to use something like registry numbers. I don't know, like, there's all kinds of wacky different ways that people try to remember these things in their head, but really don't rely on your brain to remember your passwords. That's where we run into trouble in the first place. And again, if you can secure a very small little black book, that's always my favorite, because, like I said, if you need to, light it on fire, or however you need to get rid of it, shred it, whatever it takes. So yeah, that's pretty good. That's I hope that answers your question on passwords, on how to generate them. So again, grc.com/passwords.htm. I think it's just a great little implementation, and you can learn a lot actually reading about how it generates passwords, and kind of tell you more, break down more into what I was getting started on what makes a great password in the first place. And of course, GRC is working on kind of the solution to passwords, that being Squirrel. Which I've talked about that technology many times. If you want to read up more about it, it's also at that website. So I am excited for when I am really fucking excited for when that comes out. So okay, let's get into a little bit of gaming. A question here, and a person asked me if I had checked out, and this, I don't know who exactly asked this. I don't think that's their real name, but I think they know who I am because they asked me about Conan. Well, first off, they knew I was a gamer, but then also, I'm guessing they realized, or maybe they didn't realize, that I am a huge fan of the works of Robert E. Howard. All of them. I mean, Brack Morn, Solomon Kane, Kull of Atlantis, Conan the Barbarian. I mean, I've been reading those books forever. Been reading the comic books too. I mean, I am such a fan. In fact, the movie Conan, I like Conan the Destroyer too, but the movie Conan the Barbarian, easily one of the greatest movies ever made. I mean, that is a masterpiece. John Milius, I mean, just fucking brilliant. Like, how he made that. I mean, he made the Hyborian Age like really come to life in such with not a huge budget either. I mean, he and obviously, Arnold Schwarzenegger's just sheer force of personality, put it all on display. I mean, it was the real deal. And I think Conan the Destroyer is a great movie too. I really love that. I always wish there was a third one. I'd still be open, frankly, to a third Conan movie, and Schwarzenegger could pick it up. I would have been open to. Well, there's so many missed opportunities with this guy. Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, or his real name Paul Levesque, from of course, of WWE, of wrestling fame. Man, the missed opportunities. Like Hollywood you could have done the He-Man movie with him. You could have done a new Conan movie with him. Not that they did a bad job with like Jason Momoa or the Conan TV series from the 90s, which I really liked, which had, oh boy, what's his name there from Gladiator? He was also in Gladiator. Now, that's terrible. I can't remember his name. Anyway, Ralph Mueller? I think it was Ralph Mueller was his name. The guy was just, I mean, what a presence that dude had. And what a great soundtrack too. I have a copy of that soundtrack. Woo! So, good luck finding that, even digitally. It ain't happening. So anyway, anything Conan, I am right on board with it. Now I tried, was it Conan Unleashed? That was the recent MMO that got released for that as far as games go. It's kind of a shame because there hasn't been that great Conan game when you think how easy that would be. And it would, I mean, even considering like kind of Conan copies, I guess you could say, like Rygar for NES. And of course they made a newer version of Rygar back in the aughts that was really good too. I think it was for PS2 and the first Xbox. It seems like such a natural fit. And yet it just never really came into being. So now there's a new Conan game out there called Conan Exiles, and it is only on Steam right now, and it is early access. So asking me if I've played it, no. Because, it's got to be really something special. And I mean so goddamn special where like I am just chomping at the bit to play, to where I would buy an early access game. I just don't do it. We talked about it on episode 210 of Sovryn Tech, where Gabe Newell, the head of fucking Valve, / Steam, pretty much admitted that, like early access is a waste of people's time and money because you never know if the game's actually going to get finished. The game may take on a totally different direction. And what are you hashing out for? It's $60? I mean, consider what was the Planetary Annihilation? Was that the name of the game? Where like it was like $80 at first, and the thing never really when they finally said it was 1.0, it wasn't polished at all, and then they released like a second game it's so fucking weird. I hate early access, but there's reasons I'm going to talk about this now. To get into this game on early access, it starts off at $30. There is like a $60 Barbarian edition or something. They always do the upsell, right? Which, understand, if it's a game that I love, I don't mind. Like, if it's something I'm looking forward to, think something like Shadow Warrior 2, which, by the way, somebody messaged me and said they thought they totally agreed that Shadow Warrior 2 was Game of the Year for 2016, which I had said on Sovryn Tech a couple episodes ago. And thank you. It's good to be vindicated. So, but if it's something like that and they come out with like a deluxe edition, I don't mind buying the deluxe edition. Maybe not necessarily because I want all the extra stuff, because you can just usually the extra stuff, especially if the game is available on GOG, on Good Old Games on GOG.com, you can just torrent it. Like you can go and just get the extra pack. People make them available all the time. You don't have to pay that much for it to get it. But I like doing it just because if it's really something I like that much, I mean, yeah, I like. I mean, I'm a game developer myself. I like to hand over the little extra money to the game developers because I know what it takes and I know what it's like. To have to deliver that. But you don't have to, if you don't want to. Usually you can find a torrent that has all that extra content anyway, because usually that content's not DRM'd anyway, unless it's like an early item, and even then those are usually kind of a gimmick when they sell them. So anyway, Conan Exiles is available, for early access, and the world looks pretty empty, but a lot of the game seems pretty polished. And some of what I've read, I mean, the reviews aren't like glowing, but then it is pretty early in its creation. But there's something unique about Conan Exiles that I think people are getting excited about. So to first understand, Conan Exiles is it's what would you call it? Would you call that? Would you call this an RPG? It's kind of that third person. It's sort of, yeah, it's an RPG. It's like Morrowind or like Skyrim, right? It's like Elder Scrolls, where it's all that kind of that third person perspective, from behind and everything. And it can work online or it can be offline. Online, there is a persistent multiplayer universe that you can exist within. So it's kind of an MMO, but it doesn't have to be. And this is a good thing. I mean, I'll say that right out of the gate. Like, I don't necessarily have a problem with MMOs, but I really don't like always having to be connected online. Like, I mean, that's not a problem with MMOs. That's just a thing overall for me. I don't like to have to rely on the cloud. I don't like to have to rely on an internet connection, especially when I'm gaming. I mean, I really don't. So, of course, if I'm playing multiplayer, obviously I need an online connection. No shit, unless it's co-op or unless it's one screen multiplayer, kind of like the good old GoldenEye days. But anyway, this can work offline as well. So kudos to that. I think that's great. And what's unique about it is the character creation is really, really in depth. Very, very in depth character creation. And some of it's kind of ridiculous, right? And I'm I can say that it's kind of ridiculous. like there's like you can do head. I mean, and there's a lot. I mean, male and female, they offer, they don't offer anything outside of those two genders. But I'm sure you can mix things up to some degree if you wanted. So, and maybe, with enough demand, they'll do something in the future, even though I wouldn't mind if they did it right out of the gate. That'd be awesome. But a lot of customizations on height and things like this. But the interesting thing is that with the male characters, you can actually, there's a slider bar for endowment. And this does not mean some kind of money you get for getting married. This means your dick. And you can make it rather long, flapping in the wind, or you can make it to where it's practically inside of the character. In fact, there's kind of an odd thing here, okay, that I've looked, because I've checked out, a lot of the videos on this. And there's a tribe or race, depending on which way you want to look at it, called the Kushites that are in it. And they are black. Okay, like the characters themselves, when you choose Kushite, because you can choose like race and religion and all this, right? But when you choose the Kushites, they are, they're black. And for some reason, the Kushites default, more so than any other character. Every other character just has like this normal sized penis. The Kushites default to having a gigantic cock. And it's just, there it is. Take that how you will. Okay, but there it is. And I mean, you can do other things too, like you can change the pectoral, the amount, kind of the height, the faces actually, and the hairstyles. There's a lot of options there, and of course those are kind of easy to add, especially when a game's in beta. So that's kind of interesting. But obviously the guys look very, they're very muscular and all this. I mean, this is the Hyborian Age. They're delivering what you expect from Conan, from Conan's universe. And when you run around, I'll get to making women characters as well, but, when you run around in the game, like you can run around completely nude and literally your balls and, your twig and two berries are just hanging and like you can jump up and there's your cock, just like swaying in the breeze as you jump in the air. I mean, it's really, I mean, hey, whatever, rock and roll. I'm not saying I have a problem with it, by no means. I just, it's interesting and maybe kind of funny. Of course, some people will immediately want to mention the game Rust, where this sort of thing is kind of possible, but that's another story. So you could go through the entire game completely nude. Probably you could go through it nude, ad infinitum. I mean, forever. As to, well, I mean, it doesn't appear you ever have to put on clothes in the game. So that's interesting. Then you can go with women. When you make a female character, you have a lot of the same options. Height, all that stuff, and different skin tones, hair, all that different shit. But there's a slider bar for breast size, just straight up. I mean, and when you max them out, like, they're not ridiculous. I guess if I were to compare, I would guess maybe they're triple D. Just guessing. But yeah, I mean, you can, and the women can walk around, as well. I mean, this is definitely equal opportunity here, and admittedly, these nude options, there is a setting that you can choose at the very beginning where, do you allow for full nudity or not? Partial or none or whatever. So you don't, it's not like you just go into the game and, oh shit, everybody's naked. You can choose whether there's nudity or not within the game. In fact, honestly, I'm going to be shocked if when this comes out for like Xbox One or PS4, if they even allow the nudity feature. Like, I could totally see that being a PC only option, and that's why PC gaming's the best. Woo! but this is interesting. As far as the gameplay itself, what I looked at, I mean, it looks like pretty standard fare for kind of an Elder Scrolls style game. And if it's all supposed to be, I mean, you're not actually Conan. I guess you could be. So I don't necessarily know why you need to put Conan on there. I mean, the game could have been called the Hyborian Age. I mean, I get it. You're calling it Conan because that has an instant fan base, right? But yeah. It looks interesting. That's really all I have to say on it. Is that it does look interesting. I think that, I mean, I applaud, frankly, the ability to edit a character's genitalia. I mean, my favorite, something that I consider, and it's usually a toss-up between this game, or not Conan, but the game I'm about to mention, between this game and TIE Fighter from '94. It's usually a toss-up between that and TIE Fighter that I consider to be the best game. And the game I'm talking about is SmackDown 2. Okay, SmackDown 2 Know Your Role. This is a WWE game from the late 90s for PS1. It was the last one, I think, for PS1, the last wrestling game, or the last WWE game for it anyway. And the SmackDown series would go on forever. Now it's pretty much morphed into the WWE 2K, whatever year it happens to be. But the tradition is largely the same. And the amazing thing about SmackDown 2, and the reason that I consider the game to be so revolutionary and such a great game, was the amount of customization you could do was almost unheard of at the time, especially with a fully 3D character. I mean, you could make, granted with, I mean, certainly kind of basic, 3D graphics, you could make a character, a character that looked like anybody in your life. I mean, it was really, really something. I mean, I made so many dream women. I don't mind admitting that. I mean, it was awesome. And then, of course, I mean, it wasn't just also look, but like the amount of moves. I mean, it was so, you could spend more time customizing characters, creating your own characters in SmackDown 2 than you could actually playing the game. Really. So this next level of customization, I am totally open to. When Witcher 4 comes out, if Witcher 4 ever comes out, I think they should do this. Yes, let me control penis size. Yes, let me control, all the different genitalia and all this shit, right? Let people walk around fucking nude if they want to, and then let them fuck. Like, let's make this a part of gaming. So I think this kind of pushes the conversation, sort of pushes the line forward a bit, I think, to where this sort of thing is acceptable. Is it a marketing gimmick? Of course it is. I mean, obviously. Like, I don't think that these people are, that are making this game are necessarily like, oh, I want to forward the, the naturist agenda or the nudist agenda or something. I wish they were. But regardless, I'll take it. you know, and yeah, there you go. So Conan Exiles, I'll be keeping an eye on it. I mean, honestly, if the game ever comes out as a 1.0, I might get it. You know, I mean, I'm you know, not opposed. I'd love a great Conan game. Certainly, I'm totally up for that. So anyway, okay, enough Conan Exiles, and yep, there's giant dicks all over. There's dicks throughout the game. That's kind of what the messenger was saying to me. Yeah, they're all over the place. So I got a bunch of questions. I'm not going to get to any of these right now because I want to get to the last question here. But I've gotten a ton of questions on what I think about President Trump, and what I think about a lot of the you know, protests and things like this. I will be talking about that. I might get into that in episode 211 of Sovryn Tech. We might have to talk a little bit of politics because I have a lot of concerns over how this is being handled online by people that I think should know better. So maybe I'll save it for that. I'm not going to get into those now. Or I'll save it for, you know, for another Q&A or something, or maybe I'll do a little special episode talking about it. But okay, so to finish up the Q&A, I don't like these Q&As to go over an hour. Somehow they always do. They end up going like an hour and a half or something. But I want to get into a question here that well, every once in a while, and it happens maybe once a month, maybe a little less than that, maybe once every couple months or something. But I'll get a Star Wars question. And because I love Star Wars, we talk about it, you know, whenever something Star Wars happens, you know, movie-wise anyway. I mean, I read all of the books, I read all the comics, I watch Rebels every week, you know, I'm totally on board. But like certainly whenever any kind of movie thing happens with Star Wars, you know, Sovryn Tech comes to a screeching halt and we talk about it. You know, I do a review every time one of the movies comes out. Star Wars is just, you know, a huge part of me, really. Always, you know, kind of always has been. And so anyway, the question had to do with, you know, how do I feel about, and I got a couple of these actually, how do I feel about, like, what should they do with the passing of Carrie Fisher, which is just, I'm still feeling that one, seriously, and of course we talked about it on Sovryn Tech Prime, you know, a few weeks ago when it happened. But the question was forwarded to me, you know, how do I feel about it? Like what should they do? Because Carrie Fisher was contracted for episode 9. She was already, you know, she's already filmed all of her scenes for episode 8, which is coming out this year. And which, by the way, if you didn't know, the title for it is The Last Jedi. I don't know how you didn't know that. I mean, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, Star Wars news like that hits you. And it's a fine title, by the way. I think it's a great title. I have no problem with it at all. But what do we do about episode 9? Or, you know, what does Lucasfilm do about episode 9? What would I, as a fan, like Lucasfilm to do for episode 9 to handle Princess Leia? And pretty much the options that people are coming up with is either do a CGI version of her, much like what was done with Rogue One with Tarkin and Princess Leia herself. You know, where it's an actor standing there and then you overlay Carrie Fisher, you know, like a CGI Carrie Fisher, older Carrie Fisher, obviously. And they can do older. Tarkin, I think, proved that. I think that effect worked very well, in my opinion. You know, do you do that? Do you recast the character? Or do you, do you write in a death scene somehow? Or do you make some kind of death scene? Do you change things up in episode 8 or in episode 9 to where you explain why she's not on camera anymore? And I don't think you can do where, like, she's still alive, she's just who knows where she is. I don't think you could really pull that off. Like, you either need to, you know, sadly kill off the character of General Organa, or you, you know, or you do the other two, CGI or you recast. Right now, my opinion just changed recently. My first thought was just do the CGI. Because I think it worked in Rogue One, and I think it could happen, and especially if, like, Leia was, say, supposed to encounter Snoke, or, you know, some kind of dark side situation, everything could be very dark to where you could get away with a lot more, you could be a lot more forgiving with the CGI. And also, understand this about Star Wars, and people miss this, is that while Star Wars and CGI certainly has a checkered history, shall we say, like, you know, a lot of people thought that in 97, when the special editions came out, particularly the special edition for A New Hope, that Jabba looked terrible, like that CGI was so bad. and that they don't want to watch the special editions anymore. Well, understand that since 1997, George Lucas had continually improved that scene, like just that scene alone, to say nothing of others, to where he constantly improved the CGI and, just the flow of that entire scene. So, the copy of A New Hope, or the version of A New Hope special edition that you saw in 1997 is night and day from the special edition version that maybe you saw on the Blu-rays from, when did they come out, 2010, 2011? So, it's very different. And my point being with that is that even if in episode, say they do the CGI Leia in episode 9, even if she looked a little rough in that, Disney could continue to improve until 20 years from now when technology gets to that point, if it can. 20 years from now, it can look picture perfect. So I don't want to write off the CGI option just because maybe the technology's not there yet, because for posterity, it could be. And you could just keep improving it, much like George Lucas did with, with Jabba the Hutt in A New Hope in particular. And that's just one example of a scene where that's been done. So, my initial thought was, yeah, just do the CGI. That's the only answer that's really acceptable to me. I'd understand why they'd write off with the death, but I think we would lose just a powerful amount of story if they did it, if they just killed the character off. So I really don't want that. Like that's not the way I want it to go. But I heard an idea just in the past week and a half or so that changed my mind. Where I was like, oh no, let's recast. And you might be shocked because I expressed, of course, on that Sovereign Tech Prime episode where we dedicated to Carrie Fisher. I expressed how much Carrie Fisher meant to me, and I did have the pleasure of getting to meet her as well, which was phenomenal. But I heard something that I was like, "Yep, we're going to do the recast," or that's what I want, and actually, I really want it. This is how it needs to be done. And the idea it was actually from a podcast I listened to, Rebel Force Radio, which, if you didn't get from the name, is all about Star Wars. And one of the main hosts of the show, Jason Swank, and there's Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack. Jason Swank had the idea, and he just kind of came out of nowhere. It was almost like he was afraid to say it, and I couldn't believe it. But once he said it, the light bulbs went off. The lightsabers lit up. It was something else. And he said, Kate Mulgrew. And I was just like, holy shit, yes! Yes! Kate Mulgrew! Let's do that! Just instantaneously. And he said it. He said she's the only person with the gravitas that kind of has the history that, and she does. She has not a shared history as in they encountered each other a lot, but she has kind of a similar, I feel like sort of a similar history. Maybe she wasn't, unfortunately she didn't have battles with alcohol and drugs and everything like Carrie Fisher sadly did. But, a similar, roller coaster ride through Hollywood. I think that, Kate Mulgrew, she's legit. Now, of course, if you don't know who she is right away, she played Captain Janeway in Star Trek Voyager. Obviously, you can see why that would excite me. I love, at the surface, I love the idea of such a powerful Star Trek character, which I love Captain Janeway. Such a powerful Star Trek character becoming such a big part of Star Wars. Yeah, that's a nerd wet dream come true, of course. But Kate Mulgrew is a big deal. Orange is the New Black. She's on there all the. She, everybody just has tons of respect for her. She has, street cred, really, with a lot of different, social, political movements, things like this. She is totally legit. You can't argue against her. She's the real fucking deal. And personally, and I know some people think that she was rough at it, I totally disagree. She's a top-notch actress. She did a hell of a job as Captain Janeway and totally stole the show. From the boys' club, effectively, that the captain's chair was previously. Yes, there were female captains before that. I know, Star Trek 4 and a bunch of others. Okay, but she could do it. She's it. Maybe somebody could mention another name worthy of a recast. And granted, before I heard that, I didn't even consider a recast. I didn't even think. I was like, who the fuck could you get? There's nobody. Dame Judi Dench can't do an American accent as far as I know. So, and she's kind of too old anyway. So, I just could not imagine who you could possibly put in that spot. Not Glenn Close. We don't, she has gravitas. She could pull it off, sure. But I didn't even think about it, but like once it hit, I was like, yeah. And Kate Mulgrew is kind of short, just like Carrie Fisher was. I mean, it would be, in my opinion, it wouldn't. Nothing can replace Carrie Fisher. Nothing ever will replace Carrie Fisher. If somebody thinks it's insensitive to even have this conversation right now, I understand that and I respect you, and my apologies. Okay, but if we're having it, this is it. This is in my opinion, the only person that could, that I get excited about. Anybody else is just going to be like, okay, yeah, Disney, you're doing your job. And Disney has, their statement is kind of cloudy, but it seems to be saying we're not going to do CGI. So one would assume it's either going to be death or recast. And like I said, if it's recast, get Kate Mulgrew. That's what I want. I mean, she could do it, and that, I just think that would be so huge. Totally believable as the head of the Resistance. I mean, she captained a starship for 7 fucking years. She can handle science fiction as well as anybody alive, man or woman. So that's where my vote is right now. I don't know who, and I tried to find out who exactly do we tweet at, to say, look, we want Kate Mulgrew, for episode 9. How do we make that happen? And if you have to do a little makeup artistry to make her look a little more like Carrie Fisher, go ahead. But have Kate Mulgrew delivering the goods here. I really, honestly, in a lot of ways, I don't have a problem with the recast because, just don't, make sure, and I think Carrie Fisher would do this, I think Kate Mulgrew would do this, to where she would play homage, and she would try to, be as much Carrie Fisher as she can be. She wouldn't be like, I'm going to make this character my own. I think she would respect Carrie Fisher, because that's how you got to do it. When you do a recast, that's how you need to do it. Like with one of my favorite shows of all time, maybe my second favorite show of all time, Spartacus, Blood and Sand. When Andy Whitefield died in the first season, from cancer, the show was a hit, and they needed, we got to keep this going. What are we going to do here? And so they hired Liam McIntyre, right? They hired Liam McIntyre, to come in, and Liam McIntyre made it very clear, I'm going to try and be Andy Whitefield. Now you couldn't, because Andy had such a unique kind of presence, for lack of a better word, that he delivered, a unique style that he had due to his kind of like the sound of his voice and everything. It was very unique. But Liam McIntyre did the job, and he carried that show for 3 more years, and he did a great job. I guess technically 2, because Gods of the Arena was, a prequel without Spartacus. But Liam knew he needed to try and be like Andy. So that's the thing. You got to pay that respect. Do not go in there and try and make it your own character. Do not try and change things up. Just know that you are here. It is an honor for you to fill these shoes, to try, not even try to fill them, but just, it needs to be done, and you do it out of respect, for someone else. And I think, again, she's the perfect choice. Kate Mulgrew all the way. So anyway, that's enough of that. I'm not going to... There were a couple other questions here. I'm going to save them. If I didn't mention it earlier, next week the Q&A is going to be the big religion episode, where I'm going to answer a lot of the religious questions that have been asked. Also the question about the Aleph. I'm going to get into all of that. So it's going to be a themed Q&A next week. But I'll make sure there's some fun treats. And of course, you'll have the very special Hangouts. Again, the Hangout is the live Hangout for Sovryn Tech. It's going to be on Sunday. I will push out the link on Patreon. It'll be Sunday, this coming Sunday, and it'll be at 6 p.m. So that's, Sunday the 5th, and at 6 p.m. Eastern, okay, Eastern. And we'll rock and roll, and you can be on camera. You're at the very least, your voice will be there. If people just want to do it, if they want to just text me or not text me, but if they want to just put in questions, like say on YouTube or something, where you can watch it, and you will have the link to be able to watch. You don't have to actually be in the Hangout. I'll share both links. If you just want to watch it as compared to be a part of it, that's fine too. But yeah, that'll be this Sunday, February 5th at 6 p.m. Eastern. So a lot of good stuff coming for you. And of course, we got a Sex and Science Hour coming out this week. And I already have it kind of planned out. Got a dynamite Sovryn for episode 611 that I think you'll enjoy. So there it is. Woo! Your Wednesday Q&A, locked and loaded. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.